missed my entire intro. I had a whole intro I just gave you, and I forgot to take it off mute. Jeffrey Melvin, my co-host, Rick Hale's joining. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you doing today?
You know, it's good. I've got a whole lot more productive. Facebook's down. You know, I don't know if everybody knows, but Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, some of T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, Google, and Amazon Web Services are all experiencing outages today. And man, sounds like a productive day, huh?
I'm telling you. I know we talked about it. I took in social media off my phone and added it as a time blocking time spot on my calendar every day. And I'm telling you, my productivity has completely changed, Brett.
Yeah.
Since doing that versus, I mean, I always feel like at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't have enough time to get this done. And then I see my usage reports and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do have time to get that done. So
yep.
I hate that
I think it's funny when they take it away from us, the life looks different. Rick Hale, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We were just laughing that we're highly productive today because every social media in the world just decided to go down. So everybody has to work now. But anyway, here we go.
Whatever it takes.
It is October. It's our first industry update of the fourth quarter. Overall, Jeffrey, third quarter, year to date, how you feeling?
Maybe a little more stable. Being able to feel like I can project a little bit about what's coming potentially down the pipeline than I have the past two quarters, honestly. It was a lot of, I'm not sure. And now we got history to base statistics and moving forward on. I'm feeling a little bit more confident.
Gotcha. Rick, what's your take?
I mean, Steady Freddy wins the race. So I think it's been good and solid. I'm seeing the numbers come in for our offices and they're consistent and productive and positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, has anybody ever made a mistake besides me? I need to fess up to a small error that we've been making, guys. So let me pull my screen up here first and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I've been tracking these numbers now for 6, 7, 9 months, something like that. And when I track these numbers, we were tracking them in our residential statistic here. And I went through our regular stats this morning with Niale putting all this together. And we had 1,485 new listings and 981 pendings and 1,657 closings. And I was teaching Niale how to do it so she could do it in the future. And she got different numbers. And I went, what do you mean you got different numbers? And then I ran it again and I got different numbers. And we realized what was happening was when we were running our hot sheets in FMLS, they were timing out at 5,000. So it wasn't the exact numbers, it was a sample set of 5,000 numbers out of the FMLS. So now while the ratios were good, I mean, 5,000 is a good sample set to give us a perspective on ratios. I'm not sure the numbers were exactly accurate. So I've got to own that, as painful as it is. Luckily, we figured that out this morning. So what we're going to do going forward is we're going to start tracking them by county. And we've already started. So you can see these numbers here in Fulton County. And these are exact numbers. So there was 836 new listings, 204 went under contract, 470 went pending, and 498 closed. Now, what's different about those numbers from weeks past?
I don't know, Brett. What's different about it? I'm just
live question.
Trying to process it.
Well, what kind of market have we been in?
Clearly, it's been a seller's market.
Seller's market with low inventory.
That's right.
So
high absorption.
As far as I can remember, we had more closings than we had new listings coming on the market, right?
Okay.
Well, as we're going through these counties, look at the relationship between new listings and closings, or new listings and pendings. So Fulton County had 836 new listings, 470 went pending, and 498 closed.
So it
DeKalb
says we're
County,
building inventories, what that would imply.
437 new listings, 271 pending, 317 closed. Every county I'm pulling, 443 new listings in Gwinnett, 339 pending, 422 closed. Clayton, Douglas, Fayetteville. If I go up to Cobb County, 417 new listings, 276 pending, 305. We're going to post this link so everybody can grab their own county's numbers. And I'm certainly not going to go through all of them every week, and we're going to pull out the great stories. But all of a sudden, the market just changed stories on us a little bit. And is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, good thing. It is what it is. You know, I look at it as an opportunity just to take more market share.
Yep.
So what do you attribute this to, Brett?
Well, I think we have a natural seasonality. We have a natural bell curve to our market, which says that we typically sell less homes in the third and fourth quarter than we do in the first and second quarter. Yet Rick and team and everybody, we've been talking about on this call that we actually don't believe that the market's going to slow down that much going into the end of the year. We believe the market's going to stay pretty strong. Yet all of a sudden there's new inventory coming out. And what I want people to hear from that is there's been some frustrated buyers or buyers that felt like they didn't get an at-bat over the last couple months. And all of a sudden, I think they're going to have some really cool opportunities in the next 45, 60 days to go buy some houses they couldn't have bought 3 months ago because inventory is building. Thoughts?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I look at this too of, you know, consulting with agents on pricing. Sellers have thought they could just walk in there and throw whatever price they want on their house and expect it to be taken as is. Well, the reality is things have shifted. And how are we using our data and our stats to properly price property? I mean, I look at it that way as well.
All right, Rick.
Yes, sir. I
I
mean, if
want
you
to talk
combine,
about a different statistic. How do you define absorption rate?
it's a number of homes available by the number that are actually pended and closed. So if
Okay, meaning how many a neighborhood could absorb, right?
right, if there are 12 houses on the market and they sell at 3 per month, then you have a 4-month absorption rate for the entire amount of available inventory.
Perfect. Well, I want to point something out to everybody. If you go into reports under FMLS.com, there's an absorption analysis spreadsheet you can run straight off FMLS, right? Or you can click on the statistical reports, and the statistical reports pulls up a website that looks like this. And there's an absorption analysis for new construction and absorption analysis for resale, and resale attached and resale detached for new construction and resale. So if I open this document, this is what it looks like, and it's broken down by MLS area code or MLS areas. So the irony of this is the real estate agent of tomorrow's probably doesn't even know what an MLS area is, but the data still is categorized by MLS areas, right? So I could just take, here's area 21, right? So in this report, it's broken down by price point. So if I took 1 million to 2 million, area 21, over the last 12 months, that area sold 425 houses. And right now, there's 61 houses on the market. So you got to imagine it doesn't really give us a great absorption number to go consult our clients with, right? We need it on a tighter time frame. So we can say, hey, Jeffrey, your neighborhood absorbs 4 houses a month. And if there's 5 on the market, one of them's not going to get picked next month. Does that make sense? So you actually need a little bit tighter criteria. So in this, where'd it go? In this website, you can search for absorption, but it only lets you do it by months back, which I think 1 month back would be great, right? So if I did residential detached, and just a reminder, I'm under reports, absorption analysis, right? So if I do 30305, 1 month back, I could even run it by subdivision, and I hit run report. And now I have data that actually gives me a little bit of a crystal ball or a little bit of a consulting tool to talk to people about. So in 1 to 2 million, same area, 4 houses sold over the last 30 days. And right now there's 7 on the market. So in theory, if nothing new comes on the market, 4 are going to sell and 3 got left out, right? So now, how do I turn that, Rick or Jeffrey or anybody, into a conversation with a seller?
Well, I think it has everything to do with competition and being able to depict unique value, your unique value proposition relative to the 7 that are currently in inventory. Recognize what the potential default rate is, which based on what you flipped through a minute ago, it was about 10 to 15% were withdrawn or expired. So if you eliminate those, then what's left that you're competing with, and what does it take for you to be the winning prize or the first pick among options for a buyer in that price point in that specific area?
Somebody else was going to say something.
So Rick, with that mentality, that mindset, is when you're building comparables and looking at your property lined up to the other ones, are you looking at more of what's active and what sets you apart, or are you looking backwards at what closed?
Well, it's got to be a little of both, but it depends. So that's the better answer. Depends on whether the market's flat, ascending, or descending. And if it's an ascending market, then you kind of have to look forward more than in the rear view, other than to tell, kind of best guess what percentage gains are you experiencing. And if we put it on the market, say 45 to 60 days from now, after you prep it, what's the market likely look like so that we can at least run our best analysis for a potential net return. And then the time that it takes to sell has everything to do with the absorption rate. Assuming things don't change, then you're looking at about just under 60 days. I mean, if they're selling at a clip of 4 per month and there's 7 on the market, might even be a month and a half if one of those 10% don't sell, right? But ultimately, you've got to go line item by line item and go house to house, because people don't buy a graph. That's just information to make sure their mindset's right. And in some ways, this almost is a great tool for your buyers to go, here's what's really going on. In 2 months, what you think exists won't even be on the market. And if you're going to move on it, we probably need to not dilly-dally, which is not a new story, but it's statistically supported, not just your opinion as a realtor, who sometimes buyers think we're manipulating a conversation to quickly push for a sale.
Yeah, because when they don't get the answer they want to hear from us, they'll go find their data somewhere. So we're not ready with it.
They'll prove their story one way or another, right?
Right. Yep. So data is just reinforcing, reality.
Well, but I think what's important about this conversation is our market is actually shifting a little bit, and their friends that sold their house 3 months ago are not going to have the same experience that tomorrow's market's going to have. And you don't have to be the bad guy. Let the data be the bad guy and you be the consultant, right? But if you don't understand how these numbers work, they create an emotional reaction to what you're saying instead of a logical response, right?
100%.
Anybody else? I think that's an important concept, because we're seeing some numbers shift in our market that we haven't seen shift in a while. And I think that's a great thing, because we're moving more towards better inventory, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people that have been very frustrated. Terry's got a question. She said, how many months do we look at to decide if ascending or descending market? We now have first month of buyer's market. Well, I wouldn't say buyer's market, but is this enough to say we're in a descending market? Anybody want to take that?
It's all about.
I don't know, Rick. What do you think?
Historical data. You've got to go back more than a month. You've got to follow the trend line. So, excuse me, where Brett showed, you did a hyperlocal clip of right now. When you went through the counties, you would need a 6-month sample, maybe even a year or two, to be able to really see what the overall trajectory looks like in the form of, a graphic illustrated graph would be perfect.
Yep. And we had that, but we started over. So we'll start a new graph next week, but it'll be more hyperlocal because it'll be county specific. Yet when you're consulting a seller, it needs to be as local as you can go, right? So if you can get an absorption rate on a neighborhood, that's about as local and real time as you can get, right? Mark, you want to speak to what you're putting there?
Yeah, I was just saying the market's normalizing, but prices aren't descending. That terminology, descending and ascending, sort of makes people think about pricing, and I'd be careful by using those terms. I would say the market's normalizing. It's not accelerating as quickly as it has been. Inventory is growing, those kinds of terms, but not necessarily say ascending or descending, because I think when you do that, they get an impression that prices are going up or down.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not referencing pricing. I'm referencing the trend of what's happening in the data.
Yeah.
There is a difference, and a good point to be made, Mark. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So it's something we're watching. We've been sitting around hoping and waiting on this moment for inventory to go to a place where it was getting better, not tighter, right? And it looks like in the data, we might be at that moment. We'll see next week, right? Go ahead.
No, go on. Nope, you're good.
Couple of things that got a little interesting this week. Obviously, I want to point out before we even go into anything, this is an opinion piece. Agents' commissions are headed for a reckoning. 3 things to consider. Of course, they sell articles that way, but here's the interesting part: is the Department of Justice and the National Association of Realtors have been butting heads for a long time around how we practice our industry and how we charge commissions, and can we fix a buyer commission, or can a buyer not negotiate their own commission, blah, blah, blah. You've seen articles over time, but the Department of Justice made a really interesting statement today. It says, real estate is central to the American economy, and consumers pay billions of dollars in real estate commissions every year. If we didn't read anything else in this article, I think that's an amazing statement for our industry right there. One is, real estate is the central point, and every economist knows that the real estate market is the #1 driver to the US economy. Because it ultimately it affects GDP more than any other sector of the industry or the economy, which says that the government is very in tune with making sure our industry thrives. I think that's important, but then it goes on to say we cannot be bound by a settlement that prevents our ability to protect competition in a market that profoundly affects Americans' financial well-being, meaning they don't want to try to regulate our industry so much that it affects their ability to drive the economy later. And there's been a lot of conversations politically and in the media around our industry and pricing, yet our industry is pretty well insulated financially with political action committees, almost bigger than most any other industry in the US, on one side of the fence. And on the other side of the fence, the government is very motivated to make sure the real estate ecosystem thrives, which I think is a big deal for our industry. Any comments on that, guys?
Comment wise, no, I'm fascinated with the content and the information, but I don't know that I have a comment that's worth providing any more value than that.
Perfect. Well, I think what I'd take from this is just understand that our industry is such an important industry of the U.S. economy that all parties, no matter who you are, is motivated for us to thrive. And I think you see that whenever a recession happens, real estate tends to be the first thing the government will do to pull the economy out of a recession. It's just a powerful thing. Rick, anything?
I think you kind of nailed it. We're a powerful industry with lots of influence, but I think it still comes down to value proposition when it comes to local market, being able to penetrate markets and gain opportunities. As a realtor, you're only worth the value a consumer sees in what you deliver. And I think it's incumbent that we don't take it, for granted that just because lobbyists are working for us, that will always be worth whatever percent appears to be the trending number.
Right. Perfect.
I've had so much fun over quarantine diving into my board of realtors. I'm with Northwest Metro in Bartow County into the RPAC committee and team, and just soaking in all that information that's coming out of there that they're putting out. It's fascinating. If you're into that kind of knowledge, look into it with your board.
There you go. All right. Next article, Atlanta Business Journal says interest rates, if they rise in 2022, could that slow down the U.S. housing market? What do y'all think?
Interest rates are an important driver. Affordability is really the ultimate question, and interest rates drive that. How much house can you afford? And to Mark's point, if housing, continues to become inflated in terms of pricing, at some point it becomes less affordable and fewer buyers capable. So that tips the scales of supply and demand, which speaks to Terry's question earlier, which I don't know that we answered, by the way, and that a balanced market is between 5 and 6 months of inventory before it turns over. It's been less than 30 days in most areas. So I wouldn't say it's a buyer's market. It's been a seller's market, steady Freddy. The question is it headed towards an evening out or a more normalized market or not? Interest rates will clearly have an effect two ways. One, the actual affordability and capacity. The second half is consumer confidence and how people feel about extending beyond their natural, budget or mental mindset for where they want to go with what it costs to have a home.
I'm going to throw a weird thought out there. If I'm a buyer and I'm willing to spend $20,000 extra just to get a house under contract in a acute seller's market, do I have the same emotion about an interest rate going up half a point?
I kind of hope it helps get a lot of these people off the fence. Honestly, if they start raising rates a little bit, maybe people will actually really dive in and listen to what we're saying about how to win the offer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be upset if it went up a tiny little bit.
So here's what I'm going to say. Let's say the interest rates go up half a point, and it normalizes the real estate industry. To Mark's point, it actually could end up saving somebody that would, in today's market, had to put $20,000 down to get into the house. Instead, they're just going to pay a little more on a payment, but they're not having to compete at such a level. They should understand that it's a give and take in two different ways, right? Interesting
Absolutely.
Perspective, right? But I do think the rates are going to creep up a little bit. I don't think it's going to do that much to our industry. But you certainly can read the article on the Atlanta Business Journal.
It also depends on the price point, Brett, whether 20,000 is a deal maker breaker or
Sure,
almost irrelevant in the eyes of a consumer who really wants a particular house.
Yep. So if anybody knows somebody at the Atlanta Business Journal that can get this ad off my screen, that would be great. But here's the second point to this, right? Is homeownership less affordable than any point in the last 13 years. What does that mean?
Prices are way up and income is not.
You're right. That could create a problem down the road.
Directly speaks
Inflation
to
is up.
affordability. Yeah, it speaks to affordability.
Inflation's up. Affordability is such a big part of the real estate industry. And what you're seeing is that first-time homebuyer sector of our industry is kind of dissipated. And that's a product of that, right?
It's interesting.
Anyway, it's something to keep an eye on. Listen, I committed when we did the industry updates not to only bring the fun and exciting news. I committed to bring all the news and not try to play media and only bring the bad news. But I think it's important that we're educated on all round aspects of our industry so we understand. And do I think this is a problem? I think it's a problem for down the road. I don't think it's a problem today. And I think there's some smart people that can certainly change the landscape of this in the near future.
For sure. And there were a couple of things I think it was in the last article when I read it a while back that said like the total mortgage debt has now exceeded the pre-recession number. I found that interesting in total. And the other thing to consider is that if I understand correctly, and I think so, that the Fed's rate actually affects the government's ability to pay back its debt. And they're really kind of hamstrung on being able to aggressively raise rates to curb inflation, given the amount of debt we're currently covering. And a default on the debt by the US would be catastrophic. So there's some elements there of trying to maintain affordability at the governmental level. And then I believe, we've got an election year coming. So that tends to compress, a lot of aggressive maneuvering that might reflect poorly on the economic status. So I think for the next year, my outlook's still optimistic, but cautious.
Yep. I think that's the key word of the takeaway, Rick, is the outlook right now is there's a lot of really good things going on. Jeffrey, is inventory starting to build. Opportunity for people that haven't had opportunity might be on the forefront, right? And certainly our market and our Metro Atlanta real estate market is far better positioned than most markets around the country. We've shown that in data over the last couple of weeks. Now, on the downside, yeah, you might see interest rates creep up a little bit. We do know there's a sector of our market that's suffering on affordability. And we believe that there might be some reprieve to that coming in the short run. Outside of that, we've talked to inflation on here, and we've talked about supply chain shortage creating inflation. Any holiday shopping you guys need to do, I'm encouraging you to do it way sooner than normal, not the day before like I usually do, because supply chain shortage is a real thing, guys.
Good luck with that Xbox.
In other words, get on Amazon, right? They didn't say they were down. So hopefully you have a productive day since social media is down. Love you guys. We're here to help. Let us know.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Mark and Jeffrey. You guys were instrumental. Appreciate
Awesome.
your input.